All right, let's go back to the land for a second. The land can actually be divided too. The land has got subsurface, surface, and air rights. And you can divvy those up. I can keep the surface and sell my subsurface. I can sell the air right, keep the surface, lease the subsurface, lease the air right, keep the subsurface, and rent the land. Yeah. Trust me, it took a long time to say that. Practice that. Basically, you can split them up. Air rights, surface rights, subsurface rights, all of those can be split. Couple funny stories. The air rights. The air rights is a big one because that is one that technically when people say, well, I own from the center of the earth to the heavens above. Yes, you do. But the heavens above have been defined by the court. All right? Not on the test, so don't worry about it. A couple fun stories. In 1943 in North Carolina, the Air Force decided to reopen an Air Force base to practice landing and takeoff. They were coming in so low that one of the farmers scared their chickens to death, literally. Scared them so bad they ran into the chicken coop, killed them all. He sued the government. It went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court because he said, that's my airspace they're flying over. They can't do that. So in the court documentation, they asked him, how high were the airplanes? And his answer was 53 feet. Not 50, not 100. 53 was his answer. So the government ruled that from 53 feet down is your air rights. All right? Above 500 feet is the FFA or the FAA. I can never get those two straight. Flying tractors? No, wait. So it would be the FAA. All right? The problem that we're having now is between 53 feet and 500 feet. Because what flies in there? What's the new problem? Drones. So you hear those people all the time, well, if it flies over my property, I'll shoot it. If it's above 53 feet, you may have an issue. Because the government has already ruled that that's kind of a gray area. So air rights, while you own to the heavens above, you don't own to the heavens above. There have been court cases where they tried to sue Russia for Skylab. People have tried to sue United Airlines for flying over. People have tried to sue T-Mobile for shooting air signals over their property. Every time the court has struck it down and said, yes, while you do own that airspace, theoretically, for the good of the public, it has to be usable. A what? It's kind of like an easement. Very good. It would be an air easement. So for the good of the public, they have determined that T-Mobile can shoot signals over your land and it's not a problem. All right, even though, I own it. Couple other stories about air rights that's amazing to me. Three of my favorite stories. Here in Indianapolis, you guys know where the Blocks building sits? The Blocks building downtown, Market and Meridian. No, that's not right. See, I lied to you. No, it's Illinois. Illinois and Market. Close enough. You guys know what I mean. It's Illinois and Market. It used to be the old Blocks building. Now it's an apartment building. What sits just west of that? The Capitol building over there on Senate Street. All right? So the guys that developed the blocks building, they went out and had the engineering study, the structural permit, the zoning, all of this done to add 8 stories on top of the blocks building. Then they got a genius idea. And you know that this idea had to involve an attorney getting drunk, because there's no other way this would have come up. They actually went to the Historical Society and said, hey, if we build 8 stories on top of our building, it's going to block the sun on the Capitol building. And it will lose its luster and beauty. So here's what we'll do, Historical Society. We will sell you our air rights above our buildings for $1 million so that we won't build. And the Historical Society went, okay. These guys got paid $1 million to not build condos because the Historical Society owns the air from the top of their building to the heavens above now and will block them from ever building. So the sun will never be blocked on the Capitol. That's genius. Right down the street, Senate and Washington. There's another building. The Simon Building. Simon Building says, we want to be downtown. If you don't get us downtown, we'll move to Clay Terrace or wherever, Keystone, and take all our people with us. So the city said, okay, we'll sell you that park right there, and you guys can build our building. And the city lost their freaking mind. You can't sell the park. It's our last green space downtown. So the city said, okay, we won't sell the park. What they did is they leased the ground and sold Simon the airspace above it. So Simon owns the building sitting on leased ground. So the city can now legally say, we didn't sell the park. We still own it. We just now have a tenant that sits on it. For 99 years at $1 a year, by the way. Heck of a deal. So that's an example of the city kept the surface. They kept the subsurface where the parking garage is and sold their air rights to Simon, who owns the building in the air rights. All right? So you can divide these. Now, one more, probably my absolute favorite one. And I don't know how you feel, but this is another genius move. Tiffany's, that sits on 5th Avenue in New York Street. Young upstart landlord buys the building beside Tiffany's. Asks Tiffany's, hey, I want to build a skyscraper. I want you to sell me your building. Tiffany said, we're not selling. We've been here 1 billion years. We're never going to sell. So the landlord said, okay, will you sell your airspace above Tiffany's? And they said, well, if you're dumb enough to buy it, we're dumb enough to sell it to you. And he said, okay. So he bought the airspace above Tiffany's. And then what this landlord did was build his building over the top of it and then went out and put his name on the building. And that's Trump Tower that sits on 5th Avenue. The Tiffany's that sits in the lobby is not his. It is a separate tax parcel he built around it. Genius to think of that. He had the alley vacated behind him. He bought all the other buildings. Tiffany's held out, so he built over them. They sold their airspace above their building, and he bought it. And he just built right over the top of them. There's another one like that. The Penn Station sold, and now it's like MetLife. The MetLife building is above Penn Station because they did the same thing. There are plenty of examples of people selling airspace to get to that. I'm checking to see. In the subsurface, you also have, and this book kind of leaves it out, you also have oil and gas rights. You've got mineral rights. So you can actually sell parts to your subsurface. I want to sell all the oil and gas rights. That's the new fracking that's going on. Hey, I'm going to own the land, but I'll sell you the oil rights. And to get to the oil rights, even more genius. I got to rent you some of my surface so you can put your derrick on it to pump all the stuff out that you're buying from me. I personally know a guy right now that is doing this. He's making like 12 grand a month rent that they're paying him to be on his land to get to the oil that he sold them. Yeah, that's another one. Billboards. Billboards take your airspace. They will rent your airspace to put a billboard on. Cell towers rent your airspace and some of your surface where they actually build on. Those are good leases if you can get them. You know, typically they're 20, 30-year leases. You know, they may not pay a lot, $800, $900 a month maybe, but you're locked in for 30 years. It's a heck of a car payment that you're guaranteed for 30 years. Any questions about surface or subsurface or air rights? Air rights become important when we start dealing with condos because it is very common to sell the 34th, I always get those mixed up. 28th, let's go with that one. Sell the 28th floor. That's an air right. They may only own between 90 feet and 100 feet. You know, they don't own any of this. So air rights become important with that. How can you what?
I was going to say, how can you sell above 53 feet if you're only guaranteed?
That's another good question. I was waiting for someone to say that. Typically, it's 53 feet above the top of the building.
Oh, okay.
So if they do the big skyscrapers and things like that.
Because your real property.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah. All right, hold on a second.